I really do not know how we can continue on in the housing market. More and more people are not able to buy homes. There's a huge affordability crisis going on here in America, and a lot of homeowners are just deciding to rent as opposed to buying a home, setting themselves up good for their family, for their future generation. And more first-time homeowners are not even being able to qualify for a first-time home application, home purchase application. We're going to drill into the data. We're going to look up some Redfin data and what we can do in order to change this, or what can happen. Because honestly, it just seems like the 1%, the richer folks, the higher class folks, are the only ones who are able to buy a home, and they're the only ones that are able to buy multiple homes to rent it out to middle class and lower class individuals. And so how can you be on the opposite end to be a person that actually owns a home, but you may not have the highest salary? Maybe you need to move to a different city. Maybe you shouldn't be too attached to living in this or that big city. But that's the reality that we're facing right now in the housing market. And so I'm going to drill into this article and we'll talk about it. Be sure to subscribe to this channel as we talk more about the housing market, personal finance, and the economy as a whole. All right, so according to Redfin, first-time buyers need to earn 13% more than a year ago to afford the typical US starter home. So first-time homeowners, compared to last year, compared to the home prices of last year, compared to mortgage rates of last year, they need to make 13% more. You see inflation, they're saying that inflation is only around 6%, but yet I need 13% more dollars in my pocket in order to buy a home. That doesn't make sense. Inflation has to be higher than that amount then, right? But that's the stat, that's the data that the Fed is using and other people are using. That's why I believe the Fed needs to be a little bit more aggressive with hiking up these interest rates, but you know how much ties they have with the banking sector and like what it did earlier this year with certain collapse with certain banks, and so the Fed doesn't want to see that happen. But I believe in order for us to truly come back to affordability, you have to have a crash. You have to have something collapse. Yes, you're trying to control it, trying to have a soft landing, but that's super difficult to do. New listings of started homes are down 23%, the biggest decline since the start of the pandemic. San Francisco, Austin, Phoenix are the only major US metros where the income needed to buy a starter home has dropped over the last year. It has risen over 20% in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Miami, more than anywhere else in the country. The share of starter homes going to all cash buyers is near a decade high. So several things here. So number one, new listings of starter homes are down 23%. You see this in the car market. More manufacturers are not making affordable vehicles. You saw that with Ford. They stopped making sedans and they're just concentrating on their trucks and their higher end vehicles because those are more profitable. Why make a Ford Focus and only make $2,000 when they can make an F-150, the same amount of labor to make the F-150, and make $6, $7, $8 grand per vehicle? You see that in a way happening in the housing market. First of all, there's a short supply in the market, and you have these investors, they're paying more for material, they're paying more for labor, and they're going to sell a house for $250,000. They'll still make a profit, but they make way more if they sell for the medium sell price around $450,000. And so that's what you see home builders doing, on top of not a lot of builders are building right now because they see a turn in the market also, right? They're not able to get the same type of financing they got last year. All right, and then you see these areas. You see San Francisco, Austin, and Phoenix, where this number actually dropped. Well, they increased so much over the pandemic, right? These cities saw double-digit increases every quarter, like year over year, for their home prices. And so they're finally coming down, where areas in Florida, they've always been increasing since the pandemic. And so you have most of the area in America nationwide requiring 13% more of your money in order to buy a starter home. And you have very few cities where that price is actually down. Now, you can find a city that's more affordable, hopefully, and find something, but a lot of times people don't want to move to that city, right? Maybe it doesn't have the same amenities or the type of schooling or the type of diversity that you're looking for in the area you want to live with your family. Now, going back to inflation, I just think it's so funny that these inflation reports say, oh, inflation is 6%. Yeah, and I said this earlier in this video, but how is the inflation 6% when I'm paying 15% more for groceries, groceries, 15% more for gas, 15% more for housing, 15 more. It shouldn't inflation be around 15%, but it is what it is. So your first-time home buyer must earn $64,500 per year to afford the typical U.S. starter home of 13%, $7,200 from a year ago. That's due to the 1-2 punch of the higher mortgage rates and higher home prices. Yeah, the Fed hiking up interest rate has a, correlation to higher mortgage rates. And so that's a huge thing. Yes, if you were buying the same home last year, even for these higher prices, you wouldn't need 13% more. Mortgage rates are one of the main culprits, but the reason why is because of inflation and because of all these different factors. But look at this chart. This is super interesting. So you see starter home costs more than ever before. 2019, before the pandemic, $166,000. That's crazy. And then now, June 2023, $243,000. This is actually an affordable home in a lot of areas. Like if you can buy a starter home for $250,000, you got yourself a good deal, honestly. But the thing is, like if you're a single person, if you're still starting out or things of that nature, maybe you may not afford it. Now, I believe most married couples can earn at least this much a year and they could buy a starter home, but it's just hard to find those starter homes where it says that new listings of starter homes are down 23%. And a lot of times, like in my area, I see these starter homes, but they're not in the best area. The crime is usually high, not good school districts. And so if you want to take that risk and move there, then do that. Like honestly, areas that are deemed as bad are not actually that bad. You just got to protect yourself, make sure you lock all your doors, that you have your cameras and everything, but you can actually live a comfortable, normal lives in C-class areas. Like you can do fine, but a lot of people don't want to do that. And yes, there is a higher risk level living in those areas. All right, so I just want to highlight this right here. San Francisco, Austin, Phoenix are the only U.S. metros where starter home buyers need less income than they did a year ago. But the thing is, these home prices are ridiculous in these areas. So San Francisco, for example, you must earn $241,000. That's way more than the $64,000 that you may need nationwide to afford a typical starter home, down 4.5% from a year earlier. Austin buyers need $92,000, Phoenix need $86,000. So in these higher priced areas, still need a higher income in order to afford these homes. Starter home prices have declined some bit. So in San Francisco, it's 910, shy of 1 million. Austin is 347, and Phoenix is 325. So let me know if you're in Phoenix, are you finding starter new construction homes for 325? Let me know. I would love to check those out. But West Coast markets, you see the biggest declines happening in California for starter homes and a lot of those areas. I'm actually surprised to see Minneapolis. I know it's kind of Midwestern, so I'm surprised to see that, maybe because it boomed during the pandemic. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention, where I talked about earlier here, is that the share of starter homes going to all cash buyers is a near decade high. My prediction is that number one is coming from people from higher cost living areas that sell their expensive home and they have $300,000 worth of cash and they're moving to a place in Tennessee. They'll just drop that money on a house. Why get a mortgage at 7%? Let me just use this cash from my house to buy this house. A lot of people are doing that. Number two is that investors are scooping up these houses. They see the short supply of housing, and so they're buying these starter homes for $250,000 and then renting them out for $2,000, $2,500 a month to different families that cannot afford to or qualify for a loan or mortgage, but they can for some reason qualify to pay rent for $2,500. So that's another thing to talk about, just the cash purchases. So all cash buyers purchase nearly 40% of starter homes in the US. More than 1/3 of the country's starter homes were purchased in cash in May, down just slightly from the previous month high of 35.2% earlier. You see this chart happening. You see it's at around 36%. For some reason back then, I think 2014, they don't have the years right here, but it reaches peak. Maybe I'm guessing this is like towards the end of the recession. So 2010, 2011-ish, they were over 45% because investors were hopping on these lower price homes during the end of the recession. Now, my view on real estate investors buying homes, I know a lot of people say you should not have institutional or investors just buy homes at all for profit. I'm obviously an investor and I have a home, but I don't have multiple homes. I have one duplex property that I rent out to good families. And I see it as a purpose. Like, I'm providing housing, good housing. I fix things, I update things, and I provide a good place so people can live and work and support their family and different things like that. Institutional buying homes, I'm not sure, but what do you think about apartment complexes? Some people want to live in those. It's not your mom and pop buying those places. You need institutional type of money in order to construct those buildings and to even buy those buildings. People saying that, but yet they live in those type of apartment complexes. And so I think there's a healthy balance between, having some regulation in that field, but not too much, right? Because, those type of properties are important to a bigger city, right? Where you don't have a lot of land, where you can't just build a bunch of homes. So you build levels and levels of housing in a complex, an apartment complex. It's just very difficult to solve. Like, is this really a huge issue that a record 41% of investors purchased were small homes? Those were 1,400 or fewer square feet in the first quarter. That's up 37% a year earlier. Here's another thing. They said cash buyers have another advantage. They don't have to pay high mortgage rates. And so here's a chart of the different cities that income needed for the median sale price of a starter home. And you see the highest, of course, is in San Francisco, California, and then Sacramento is another high one, Seattle, what other cities? Okay, wow, Pittsburgh, PA, they say you only need to make $26,000. You can buy a house for $100,000 in Pittsburgh, and your monthly payment will be $661. Now, that is a change, up 8.8%. Maybe I need to invest in these cities. Maybe I need to purchase a little house in Pittsburgh. But hey, you gotta let people buy their homes in their own areas. Okay, Atlanta, they're up 12% needed to buy a home. Chicago up 13%, Orlando 13%, and things of that nature. All right, you all, let me know what you all think of what is needed in order to buy a home. Let me know your thoughts just on the affordability issue that's going on in America. It's just very interesting things. I think there's a responsibility on us to learn this and to learn how to navigate it, learn how to, if we want to speak up against something, to do that, and also to learn how to make more money, how to buy a house, how to be like, hey, okay, yes, I love living in the city, but maybe I should look outside if I really want to build wealth and buy myself a home for my family. Maybe I'll give up the amenities of downtown living for a little bit of a slowdown so I can buy a home, right? So I think there's responsibilities on each side that we can look at and that we can address. Make sure you all like this video, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll talk to you all later.